Now, if you look at the time activity curve, it's usually not a straight line, but who cares? This is just a concept graph. So you have activity on the vertical axis, disintegrations per second, time on the horizontal axis, seconds, if you will. And so the area under the curve, which is the integral of the time activity curve, if activity is in becquerel and time is in seconds, you have becquerel seconds. A becquerel is 1 disintegration per second. Therefore, when you have becquerel seconds, you know the number of disintegrations immediately. SI units are much easier to use than the older units. If you have activity in microcuries and time is in hours, 1 microcurie hour happens to be 1.33 times 10 to the 8th disintegrations. But the key point to remember here is that A tilde, the area under the curve, is just the number of disintegrations that occurred in a region, an organ that has activity uptake. So we'll calculate dose to that organ, of course, but also every other organ in the body, which may get some of that radiation, photon radiation that escaped the original source organ. And we almost never in internal dosimetry have only one source organ. For occupational emitters, cesium-137 goes uniformly to the whole body. That's your only organ. Cobalt-60 the same. But in nuclear medicine, we always have more than one object. It goes to the thyroid, then it goes to the urinary bladder, maybe it goes to the liver and the stomach, and so on. So you've got lots of source regions, regions that have activity, and other target regions. And so one region can irradiate the other, and we need to know absorbed fractions for all of those situations. So we have to have not just one absorbed fraction, but many absorbed fractions for all of the different source and target regions that we have. So for the first organ, we had the absorbed fraction of that organ to itself 1 to 1. And I don't know why, but this is the convention. The arrow always goes to the left. But then you have absorbed fractions for object 2 irradiating object 1, 2 irradiating itself, 1 irradiating everything in the world anyway. And so you just have to add up all of these components. And so you can see immediately that mathematically this is going to be difficult, and we're going to rely on computers to do this work for us. But you have to understand what's going on inside the computer program. And this is it. It's just that same equation over and over again, all the different contributions added up. So this is your generic cumulative dose equation. Again, if you understand that equation, you understand internal dosimetry. So let's apply it. Many different authors have applied this in one form or another, and this is where it gets confusing. People look at one and it doesn't look like the other. Even the 2 icrp equations I'm going to show you in a few minutes, they look totally different. The older icrp2 and the newer icrp30, 60, totally different, but it's the same simple equation. There's many factors in this equation, and it's very common to combine some of these factors into combined quantities, and some people call it one thing and some people call it another, and that's where it gets confusing. But don't be confused, don't be fooled. It's all that same equation over and over again. So no matter where we move stuff around, what we call the different symbols, all of them incorporate the concepts in these equations, the dose rate equation 3 and the cumulative dose equation 4, and they're all based on the same principles. They're identical. I taught this stuff for 15 years, and I was teaching occupational and I was teaching pharmaceutical, and it just, they went to one course or another, but they were getting confused, and I just realized it's all the same thing. So I'm going to show you a system, the radar system, that just combines it all together for occupational or pharmaceutical. They're all the same, and given the same input data and assumptions, you'll get the same results. But on the surface, the systems look different and can be confusing. The oldest system, which you don't really need to know anymore, but the original, the first internal dose equation was developed basically independently by two people named Marinelli and Quimby. And they were just doing dose from a beta emitter to the thyroid. And you will still see people using this. If all they ever do is thyroid dosimetry, this is the basic equation. And it's just expressed with a number of symbols. D beta is the dose in rad. C is the concentration in microcuries per gram, so activity per unit mass. E is the energy of the beta, and assuming 100% of the time, which is true for some emitters. And T is the half-life of the nuclide in the tissue. We'll get to that later. But that again is historical. It's been basically updated and replaced by systems of the International Commission on Radiological Protection, ICRP. They've developed two systems that don't look the same at all, as I'll show you in a minute. ICRP2 looks like Marinelli-Quimby, and ICRP30 and beyond look different. But all of these, the ICRP2 and 30, were implemented in regulations. Now, for radiation workers, we have dose limits. Nuclear medicine, there are no dose limits. You have to be safe, but there's no regulatory authority that can tell you this is a medical issue. The doctor decides. But for radiation workers, we have dose limits, and the original ICRP2 was the basis for the United States Code of Federal Regulations, Title 10 CFR Code of Federal Regulations, Part 20, 10 CFR 20, and this was replaced with the ICRP 30 series. And in different countries, there are international implementations of this that look the same, but this is the US. And I, of course, most of my teaching is to United States workers and students, and so that's what we use. And the ICRP2 system looks just like Marinelli-Quimby, doesn't it? Except they came up with this factor psi, which, as I said, combines many of the terms in that other equation. And this Q is the radiation weighting factor. We used to call it a quality factor. And the factor 73.8 is K, that conversion factor. And we'll explain that factor 1.443 later. But the ICRP was protecting radiation workers, so they not only calculated doses, of course, but then they said, well, we have dose limits. We're going to start with a permissible dose, and then we'll go back to calculate a permissible concentration that a worker can breathe in air. Those are called MPCs in the old, this is 1960, the original 10 CFR 20 in the United States. So we had MPCs. They also had them for water, air and water. Now we just have them for air. But employees could be exposed to these concentrations on a continuous basis and not receive an annual. In this original ICRP2, it was dose rate. We did rem per year. Okay. Then the ICRP in 1979 said we need to update this for a number of reasons I won't go into. And again, this is United States regulations, which may or may not be interesting to you personally, depending on where you're taking this course. But the ICRP 30 system, they said, we're going to do a new system. We're not doing the old system. Here's a new system. H50T equals 1.6 times 10 to the minus 10 U sub S times SEE. That doesn't look anything like ICRP2, does it? It's the same thing. 1.6 10 to the minus 10 is K. U sub S is the integral of the time activity curve. I don't know why they use the term U. I've never understood that, but that's what it is. And SEE is just everything else. Now, in this case, this is activity. So now we have The energy terms quality factor per unit mass. So they're just pushing things together in a different way, but it's the same thing that you understand perfectly already. And the factor of K gives you cumulative dose in sievert from activity in becquerels, mass in grams, energy in MeV, and so on. And as with icrp2, we used it to develop a system of dose limitations for workers, but they changed the game on us. Instead of dose rate, rem per year, they want to regulate cumulative doses over the next 50 years, therefore H50. So you have